Hey guys, and welcome back to another recent gaming video, and this is actually a video I'm doing for the second time. I missed out on some important points the first time around when I was making this, so sadly that means it's been about a week since I completed this game before I could sit down here and make myself do this. But the game in question was Battlefield Hardline, a game that I only bought a couple weeks ago. I showed it off in my most recent pickups video, and I just needed a game to kind of fit in between all the other stuff that I'm playing, and I knew that the single player component of this was going to be short, so it would be easily consumed. And I should probably have already mentioned this by now, but I will not be talking at all about the online multiplayer component of Battlefield Hardline. I do not care about the online multiplayer for games like Battlefield and Call of Duty, and especially any games that are online only, such as your Star Wars Battlefronts and Titanfall, even though I don't have an Xbox One. I mean, I do have a 360 and it's available on that. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare is another one. Some of these games look interesting, but I just don't play that online component. So anyway, back to the single-player campaign mode of Battlefield Hardline. I played that, and I actually found myself really entertained by it. I had a lot of fun with this. Another thing about Battlefield Hardline that was appealing to me was the fact that it's not a modern warfare combat-style game like Battlefield 3, which I played last year or the year before, like Battlefield 4, which I haven't played, and anything in the Call of Duty series since they stopped doing World War II. I liked that Battlefield Hardline wasn't a military/wartime shooter game. It instead is more like a cop television show, like a procedural crime drama, like CSIs and Law and Order, and there's so many of them out there now. There's probably a bunch that I don't even know. But it's in that setting, and it plays out like episodes. It was done, I believe it was done in chapters, but at the beginning of each chapter it would say previously on Battlefield Hardline, and it would recap stuff, especially the cinematics and the storyline, to give you the feel like you were inside a cop show and you were a character in that world. Now, as far as the storyline and characters and the motion capturing and voice acting and all that stuff goes, it was all done really, really well. It was obvious that this was not a new generation hardware-based game. This game was released on the 360 and the PS3, so the version I played on the PS4 was just kind of a prettied up version of that. It would be really cool to see a Battlefield game that's made just for the new generation hardware. Now, I know Battlefield 1 is coming out later this year, and that one looks really, really cool. But it would have been cool to see like a Hardline 2, or possibly there will be a Hardline 2. I would be all for it. I would be for a sequel. The way the game ends, and I will try not to spoilerize too much stuff. I'm not going to give any details about the story, but the way the game ended, I feel like there's opportunity there for a sequel. There's opportunity to see more of what's going on in this particular character's life and some of the people around him. Maybe it could even be adapted the way that Fast and the Furious turned from tuner car movies into like heist movies or whatever. Maybe Hardline 2 could go from the cop thing to just more like a heist kind of thing. Just an idea I'm throwing out there. But as I said before, I missed some points in my first video that I wanted to talk about with this. And I also wanted to harken back to a video I put up recently about the problem I'm having with games today, about games that don't take me on the journey anymore. Now, Hardline, it took me on a journey. It was a condensed and in a smaller style journey, but in a lot of ways, it reminded me of how games like the first few Resident Evils felt. You weren't in those worlds for very long, but you went and did a lot of different things, and it was fun, and it was worth it. Back in the day, I could know that a role-playing game like Final Fantasy was going to give me 100 hours of gameplay for $60, but I would also know that a game like Resident Evil 2 was going to give me 7 to 15, maybe 20 hours max, depending on how how much you struggle with the puzzles or how much you want to just kind of wander around and explore it. And it would be the same price, and that was worth it to me. Nowadays, when I look at a game like Battlefield Hardline, and I know I'm not going to play any of the multiplayer stuff, and I know that the game starts out as $60, I was like, it would not be worth it for me to pay $60 for this when I could wait for it to get around $20, and then that single-player part would be worth it. But why would a $60 game in 1999 be worth it for the same amount of gameplay as a game nowadays, but I would expect it to go to $20? Well, that's because the focus on these games is on that multiplayer part. And so, since I know I'm paying $60 mainly for the multiplayer in it, that is not worth my money. I can wait until it's cheaper. So my point is, it was a short, condensed kind of game, and I paid like $23.49, I think was my actual total for it. And what it gave me that I could access was worth it for that, even though it was a similar experience to like a Resident Evil. I mean, it wasn't as good as a Resident Evil. It's better voice acted and better presented than a Resident Evil. But the experience of a Resident Evil game back in the mid to late 90s was worth the full price. If that's a point to make at all, I don't know. But it was something that I didn't really talk about the first time I tried to do this video. And I wanted to mention that. This game took me on a journey, and I enjoyed it even though it wasn't a full-fledged 60 to 100 hour epic game. Another thing that I thought was funny was, even though it was the style of game to kind of keep you in small little levels and give you certain things to do, it was relatively linear, but it felt like it had some freedom to it, but it was meant to kind of be self-contained. There were a bunch of times when it felt like an open world game, and in fact it borrows or slash rips off a lot of ideas from games like Far Cry, which surprised me. I wasn't expecting it. You had a cell phone that would scan the area, and it would locate things on the map like an explodable barrel, clues and pieces of evidence that you needed to scan to progress the story, but it could also tag all the bad guys on the map, which is just straight out of Far Cry. I mean, unless there was a Battlefield game that came out before Far Cry 3 that did that, and Far Cry maybe took it from Battlefield, or maybe some other game, it was clear to me that they were borrowing a whole lot from Far Cry, and some of the levels and some of the areas in the game were open enough to kind of feel like a Far Cry world. So I thought it was neat how they borrowed something that's, I think, is pretty cool in a Far Cry game without having to be a open world style game like those are. And it was also neat because, and it was neat, but it was frustrating and satisfying at the same time. Certain enemies that you would tag on the map would be criminals with an arrest warrant open for them. So if you just shot and killed them, I mean, you got a little bit of credit, a little bit of experience or whatever for it. But if you could take them down and subdue them in a non-lethal manner, you would actually get more experience points for doing that. But there were times when I didn't feel like the game gave me a whole lot of space and time to scan the people, and then there were times when I just ran into rooms and started shooting. But sometimes I killed those guys before I even knew that one of them on the map was them. Anyway, I just thought it was a neat little addition to it. It did kind of force you to, well, it didn't force you to do anything other than to think about, how do I want to play this? Do I just want to go in guns a-blazing, or do I want to kind of be stealthy? You even had the ability to throw like a shell casing to attract somebody over to another area so you could get behind them, or you could lure them away from other people. It's like just so very Far Cry, because Far Cry would let you throw a rock or something to draw people away from the crowd. Let's see. A couple of the things I already talked about, a few of the things that I wanted to mention, like the possibility of a sequel, the way that it was like a journey game, but it was more of a shorter, self-contained one, and that Far Cry elements. I think that was everything that I wanted to cover, and I just missed a few of those in the first video. But anyway, honestly, I really can't recommend Battlefield Hardline enough to people who like the single-player campaign modes of these kind of games, and they want something different than the military thing. Oh, well, we're getting sent to Afghanistan, or we're getting sent to Russia, or we're going to Germany, or we're going to Japan, or we're going to Korea, or we're going to wherever. The fact that this was in Miami, but it also went to other locations and told an interesting little story that had good writing, good acting. I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. I had its moments where I thought there was maybe a relationship going to bloom between my character and his female partner. It had some really good other acting and some good ideas. Oh, I just remembered the last thing that I missed on the last one. There's a point in the game where you go, I believe it's to like Arizona or something like that, desert type state anyway, and you go because a supplemental character wants to go meet up with someone from his past, and they can help us with something that we need to do. And it actually turns out to be this extra character's like ex-girlfriend, only her family and friends there are not happy to see him back, and your character and that character get thrown into a prison cell at the bottom of like a silo, and you have to make your way out of that section. And the moment I came out of my cell and looked around, I got the biggest Fallout 3 vibe, probably a lot of Fallout 4. Probably, well, Fallout 4 wasn't out by that point, but Fallout's aesthetic is pretty similar in 3, 4, and New Vegas. But I think they were really trying to channel that Fallout 3 and maybe New Vegas feel of being in one of those vaults and coming out of it. And even down to the point where you can find a soda machine, an old-timey, old-styled soda machine that was very evocative of Nuka-Cola. And when you come out of the vault, eventually you work your way out of there after taking out some bad guys and whatnot. When you come out of the vault into the desert and you open up the things, it's like the blast of white light. Your eyes have to adjust for a moment. And I was like, well, somebody there at DICE and whoever else might have been involved with the making of Hardline, somebody out there was writing a little love letter to Bethesda and the Fallout series. And I thought it was a really awesome touch. It's just one of the things that makes me feel like what a good game Battlefield Hardline, the single-player component, was for me. It was perfectly timed. I've been having some issues with Just Cause 3, and I'm also in the middle of playing Final Fantasy 7. One's a super long game that I just give a little bit of time to here and there. Just Cause 3 just ended up being frustrating in some moments, and I wanted to play something else. And this perfectly timed fell right where I needed it to, gave me the kind of experience that I wanted to refresh me towards doing other stuff. I mean, like one of them is something that I'm playing. You can see it on the TV here if you recognize that. Which I'm going to have a lot to say about this game when I get done with it. But anyway, I should be done with this. Thanks guys for watching Battlefield Hardline. I definitely like it. I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10 for the single player campaign. Like I said, I can't say anything about the multiplayer because I'm not into that stuff. But on the strength of the single player alone, pick up the game for around $20. I think a lot of people would like it. So that's that. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.